group meeting where XModders from around the world get together to learn, share, and leverage the power and flexibility of XMod Pro to build DNN sites. Uh-oh, my computer's slow.
You're still good.
I'm Melinda. Sorry. Before we start, I'd like to quickly run through some housekeeping. So since XMod Pro is used by users around the world, it's impossible to find a time that fits everyone's schedule. So this user group is being recorded, and it will be available on our YouTube channel shortly after we wrap this up. The user group is intended to be a place where the community can share their ideas and questions, and we encourage you to join us in this Hangout by clicking the link I posted in the Hangouts events page. With that out of the way, let's get things started. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Anytime, you can also post a question that you might have using the blue Q&A app. So you hover over the screen and there's a blue button on the left side, and then we'll answer your question during the presentation. So hosting the show today is myself, Melinda Ford. I'm Vice President of No Better Creative Services. Kelly Ford is also here. He is the President of No Better Creative Services, DNNDev, and the founder and creator of XMod Pro. So he'll be jumping in here now and then to also discuss some questions or discuss things that questions people might have. So with that, we have two speakers today. We have Paras Daryanani, and he's from the UK, and he's going to be presenting a website he built using XMod Pro. It's a real estate website, and so we're really excited to see what he's done with that. And our other speaker today is Ryan Moore from More Creative Company, and he is going to be discussing some more about troubleshooting error messages in XMod Pro. So with those introductions, why don't we start? Is it okay if we start with you, Paras, and take a look at what you've done with your website?
Yeah, sure,
Great.
Definitely.
So can you tell us a little about how you got into using DNN and XMod Pro?
Yeah, surely, definitely. I started with web design about 9 years ago, and in 2010 I started actually working with .NET Nuke, and I was working with skinning and design more than anything else. And that's where I discovered XMod Pro in 2012 to build data-driven websites and bigger solutions with .NET Nuke. And it was a really good solution for me because I didn't want to go too much into the back-end programming. And I have good knowledge of SQL because I've learned that a long, long time ago in school. So I was able to apply that and start building bigger and better apps. So I would say I've been working with XMod since 2012. It's been 4 years now. And it's basically my go-to tool for building .NET Nuke websites.
Oh, that's nice to hear. So we really are interested in seeing what you've done with the Realty site.
Right.
So
right, so today I'll be showing you a real estate website, correct? I will share my screen now. Let's take a look at that. Let's see. Here we go. Can you see the website?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so this is a real estate website for a small company in Suriname, South America. That's where I'm originally from, and my company, Celestial Sites, we operate in the UK as well as in Suriname. So this solution is built in Dutch. I can give it a quick Google Translate so we can take a look at it in English instead. So basically, the company is called Centraal Vastgoed, which means Central Realty. And as you can see, let's take a look at all the features step by step. So the first thing we have here is a Google Maps instance. And this shows all the objects, all the real estate objects, including homes as well as plots for sale. So the green ones depict homes, and you can click on them and you can basically zoom in, zoom out. This is all functionality provided by Google, and you can look at all the objects on a map for convenience sake. And the good thing about it is we can customize this to give you whichever color you want. So this orange one over here, these are for plots. So basically by just looking at the maps, you can see which are homes, which are plots, which already makes it a bit easy to use. Beside the Google Maps, we also have a search filter here. And the search filter, you can basically, this is a city, so you choose which city you want. status, if it's for sale or if it's for hire house, or in this case,
Rent.
this search filter is only built for homes. Then you would choose a currency. Now, this is something funny. In Suriname, we use US dollars and euros for real estate property sales and hire as well. So basically, I've built in a converter to the website, and that allows you to either use US dollars or euros to show you the pricing. And then you just choose a minimum and a maximum for the values, and then you can hit search, and it shows you the properties. Look at that in a bit. Let me just scroll down. Here you have most viewed properties based on a view counter that's been put into the website as well. That updates every time you visit one of the objects. Moving on, just some other interfaces to show you, a few fancy things here and there, a slider that you can go through and you can look at each of the listings. So all of this is actually done with XMod Pro. There's also a search function here at the top right, which you can use to search basically anything of a particular listing. So you can even put in a city name, and it will start showing you objects in that city. Or if you know the street, and why I'm saying street, the objects are named by their street. So let's say we want to search for this one, you can just start typing that in, and with jQuery autocomplete, it comes up here, and it'll take you straight to the listing itself just by clicking on it. So let's take a look at how that works for a second. So here you go, and then this takes you to a detail page. So basically, on the home page, I've used list view here, and then if you click through on any of these listings, it takes you to a detail view. So all of this purely done using XMod. On the right side, let me show you here, we have the view counter. It tells you it's been seen 3,210 times. There's a print button here that uses a print style sheet to print off the listing and keep it on paper if necessary. Here you also have the contact person, and the website has the ability to add multiple real estate agents such that multiple users can use the website and publish their own independent listings. And in the table there's a column, user ID, where their user ID is saved. That way each user owns a particular amount of their own real estate objects, and they can only edit their own objects. Of course, the admin functionality has the ability to change any listing. You'll also notice that each picture is watermarked here with the company's logo. You can look through each of these pictures. All of them are watermarked. Here I'm using Patrick's control, actually, Exile file upload, that does all the watermarking for you and the resizing of the images to optimize the speed of the website. So I'm really trying to incorporate all the features that are available and actually use them to make a really robust website. If you look at here, we have the price. It switched back to Dutch, but I hope you can just follow through with me. So here, there's a drop down. This is just pure jQuery, and if you choose euros, it'll show you the price in euros. If you choose US dollars, it switches and shows you the price in US dollars. Now, this is not calculated on the spot. This is calculated and saved straight into the database, and basically just pulls up both fields and just hides one at a time based on a quick jQuery manipulation here. So here's just a quick overview. So you have price, tells you financing, 50% financing is available. Just some other fields, type of listing. Here it says it's a flat, it's a single-story home. And then you have the amount of rooms, the amount of bathrooms, and then you have a short description here that they can fill in. Again, if you scroll down, then you have this Google map that shows you the exact location, and you can basically play around with this, look around the area and decide for yourself as the customer if this is a place that you want to live in. Now, there's also a contact form on the page itself. Most websites have a button that says contact this agent, but instead of doing that, I just put the contact form here itself just to eliminate the step of having to click an extra button. So basically, you can fill in your name, your email, and your message here and send it, and that sends it straight to the email address listed here of the realtor who has published this listing. So this is more the front end of the website. The same thing is done for plots, empty plots. Let's take a look at that. Now these are plots. What I was showing you earlier were homes, and the filter works the same way. This filter is actually really interesting. It took me quite some time to create that because I had no clue how I'm supposed to go about that. But basically, I'll take you into the code and I'll show you what I've done. Let's edit this page. And I used a stored procedure here as well as for the view, the list view here. So what happens is, let's go into this, it's actually a template, but it could be a form as well. And what I'm trying to achieve here, I'm just going to copy this over to a code editor so you can get a better overview of what I'm trying to do. Let's see. I will probably have to share another window here. Just give me a second, please. Here we go. Right, so this is my code editor, and here I have some JavaScript. And what this seems to do is, this lets me, the form is basically just a bunch of inputs that I've created and given some values beforehand. And when you submit the form, it's actually calling a JavaScript function to turn the form into a bunch of URL parameters. And that is all done using JavaScript on the front end itself. That's this piece of code here, which I will show you in proper detail now. Let's see, tidy JavaScript. And just to make it more visible, let's go into JavaScript syntax. Now I'm going to zoom in here so you can see what I'm exactly trying to achieve here. So there you go. So I have a variable called current link, and that takes the current location of the window, so just the link you are on, the URL. And this function is a function that helps you create URL parameters. So let's just look at the inputs I provide. So I've given each of the inputs a variable, and that picks up all values. There you go. Picks up values from inputs that have an ID. So for example, this ID is called status onbook, and that takes the value of the input with that ID and assigns it in a variable status1. And then what I do is I use this function gup, which throws it into a URL parameter and creates a whole URL parameter string for you called link addition. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so it's a little more visible. There you go. So each URL parameter, as I mentioned, is saved in a variable, and what happens is all these variables are collected together, and they're all added into this new variable called link addition. And I'm simply just adding them up using string manipulation, string addition. So nothing fancy here, a lot of repeated code, and I'm sure this could have been done more efficiently, but I didn't spend that much time on it. So it's basically checking if the variable is not empty, add it to this variable link addition, otherwise just skip. And that's how I've built the whole thing. So you have, this is currency exchange, this is the lower price boundary, the higher price boundary, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, and the type of home the city is located in. And this is the best part. This is where I've used link addition, the variable that has the whole URL parameter string, and thrown that into, I've made a proper link from it, a URL link, and then I've used, what it does, it assigns that new link to the button that has this ID. Now I'm going to switch back to my browser. Just give me a second again. I should probably just share my whole screen with you instead. It's probably easier that way. Here we go. So if you look at this button now, this button called filter, this is the button I'm assigning that URL parameter string to. And once you're done selecting all the things you want, you click filter, and you'll see it do what you want it to do. There you go. So it creates status for sale, and lower price equals 0, and higher price equals 750,000. And now you scroll down, and you get those results here. So this is only one part of it. This, I would say, this is the form is the easy part. The hard is the stored procedure that actually picks up parameters and gives you the result based on what you're searching for. So let's take a look at how that's been achieved. I used a template, and that template uses the list data source and executes a stored procedure here. I'm going to zoom in here as well. It might be too small for you to see. And it inputs all these parameters that are already in the URL parameter string, inputs those to the stored procedure, and of course you have to declare that they're all parameters, and picks them up. As you can see, picks them up from the URL and looks for that keyword, all of these keywords that have been assigned here. Once it's got all of these, it executes the procedure. I'm not going to read out the name, it's just too messy, to be honest. Once it's done that, it's going to get you all the objects, and then it just populates the list view for you. The list data source just populates this whole thing for you according to how you want it to look. And something else that's interesting is I use the same JavaScript function of the form here above the list view, and that just shows you these tags, which I found was a bit interesting for a user experience standpoint, because you can defilter or unfilter, if you will, by just clicking the X button here, and then it removes that particular filter. So I'm just going to close edit mode and give you a better overview of that. So let's take a look at, suppose we're looking at this city and we're looking at homes for sale. Let's say duplex houses with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and you want a price between 30,000 euros and let's choose a higher number, 1 million euros, and you click filter. So there you go. It's going to tell you nothing found, because I basically narrowed the search too much. So one of the first things I would probably do is remove the number of bathrooms and see if that helps, or remove the number of bedrooms. Now, the moment I remove those 2 filters, it updates the URL string here at the top and gets you the latest results. So this is something I found really interesting, and while it took me a while to build, right now basically it's very easy for me to build these search filters, and it gives you a really good experience, user experience especially, because it doesn't take very long. You just write a stored procedure and you build your views and your search form, and that's it. And if you notice, I'm executing this stored procedure using the exec keyword here, whereas now the latest version of XMod Pro, you can just use list data source and you can put command type stored procedure, if I'm not mistaken. So that eliminates this whole thing, and it just makes it much easier for you to use a stored procedure, and then you have much more control over it, and you can basically do, you know, the possibilities are basically endless. So that's something nice. Moving on, I've shown you most of the front end. I'm going to move to the back end now. I built a page called Manage, Dashboard Manage, and this is where, as a real estate agent, you can log in and it'll show you only your listings, unless you're an administrator of the website. In this case, I'm logged in as host, and you can then see all the listings here shown in an overview. I'm using a JavaScript library here called Data Tables, jQuery Data Tables. It's really interesting, it's really good, and I would definitely recommend using it, because it allows you to do live searching, and it uses a lot of Ajax and takes out most of the complexity for you. For example, we have 80 entries here, as you can see, and they're all spread out over 8 pages. Now, it does all the pagination for you, which is great, and it's Ajax, so you just click and it changes, gets you to the next page right away. Another good thing is you can narrow down things by just typing. So I typed the district Paramaribo, which is the capital of Suriname, and that shows you all the listings that are in Paramaribo. If you have another keyword that you're looking for example, you're looking for whether it's published or not, then you just go to true. And another thing is you can just filter here as well. So let's say you can filter by name, so location is given here as the name, or by district, and then it just filters down stuff for you. So it's a very useful library, and I definitely recommend using it, especially for things like this. And basically, you can click through, and it'll just take you to the listing. Obviously, that's not what I want to show you. I want to show you the form for inputting and manipulating these listings. So here you go. It says loading, please wait. Clients are sometimes very impatient, and they click on the form. So for example, you go to manage and you click on add listing here at the bottom. By the time the page loads, the client is already putting in a lot of the information about the listing, and I got a call one day saying the website doesn't work and the form doesn't work, doesn't do what it's supposed to. And when I looked at it, I realized that the DOM had not completely loaded, and the client was already inputting things into the form, which caused some JavaScript errors. So I just added a quick animation there as a quick workaround. So you're basically forced to wait for the page to reload and to fully load the DOM for you before you can actually start adding the listing. So that's why you have this loading please wait animation. Now once that's done, this is a 5-step form, and I will just put this in English. This is a form. I'll show you what I've tried to do here. Yeah, here you go. So this is a form, and it's done in 5 steps. It's just broken down using field sets and another JavaScript library called I think it's called Steppy or Step Wizard, something like that. Basically, it just breaks down the form in steps for you to make it a little more user-friendly, because you have to input a lot of data into this. So I tried to make it as user-friendly as possible, at the same time as simple as possible. So basically, this is a sentence that you just read out for yourself. I want to, in Dutch, the grammar gets messed up, but basically this means I want to offer a, then you choose house, not parcel, but plot, obviously. So I want to offer a house or plot for sale, so let's say house, or you say for rent. Now, if you choose for rent, a term appears here, so you choose per month, per week, per day, and you say for the amount of US dollars or euros, and you put the amount here. I use another jQuery library here. I use a lot of jQuery in my websites just to make it as simple as possible. In Dutch, the 1000 denominator is a dot, and this just helps you realize, like, this helps you know what you're actually writing, not that you write 25,000.00 or comma 00, because a lot of people would have that tendency to put the cents and the decimals on their own. But if you try that, like I'm pressing comma right now, and it just removes it. So the JavaScript library takes care of that for me. The reason I've done that, it's not particularly necessary, but the reason I've done that is because I've put the exchange rate of euro to US dollars inside my code in JavaScript, and it when you submit this form, it recalculates this number and saves it as US dollars and euros both in the database itself. So I want this to be a proper integer, and I don't want any errors, and that's what the JavaScript library takes care of for me. So let's just continue with this. You want to offer a house for rent for, yeah, let's say 1,500 US dollars a month, and you go to the next step. There you go, and this is where you put in the location. You can choose any location. For example, if your house is located, I'm just gonna choose a street here that I know. So you write down the street here and you say district, and this is where I integrated Google Maps API with it, Google Maps API version 3, and this allows you to do some geolocation, geocoding, and pre-populates this input for you here, and then you click search. And this is interesting because then it takes you straight to the location that you specified here in this review, which is very nice. And I mean, if you're the one selling the house, you definitely know where it is. So you can just pick up this map pointer and you can just drop it where you want. So if you want to say it's this property over here, you just drop it there. Meanwhile, in the back end, JavaScript is saving the latitude, longitude, and putting both of those in the hidden input field in this form itself. So going to the next step, here you have the description. I'm using also another JavaScript library here called Wizzy HTML5. What you see is HTML5 for Bootstrap. It's probably better to use another one, TinyMCE, or maybe .NET Nuke's own RAD editor, or the new the CK editor. But at that time, this is built 2 years ago, so at that time I chose to use the Wizzy HTML5 editor with just basic text manipulation uh, capabilities here. And since you can put in the specifications, it's asking for how many square meters the plot is, and you can just put in a number there. Then you go forward to the next step. I'm not sure if you guys can still hear me. Am I still there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Right, sorry about that. There was this weird sound. Right, and here again I've used Patrick's exile file upload. So you upload a main photo and you upload extra images. And this is very much like the example on Patrick's website. It's almost exactly the same. And I've limited it to 9 extra pictures. So this is quite nice. You upload the pictures. It chooses the first picture, the main photo, as the featured image. And once you're done with all of that, you've added your images, you've filled in all the specifications and all the information. Then you're here, you fill in your contact details. Now this, it pulls from your user profile in .NET Nuke. So when you create your account, this is a real estate company website, and they don't leave it open for public to create their own account. But initially, that was going to be one of the options, that people could just sign up and use this website as a portal. But the company said, no, we'd rather use it within our company instead. So this is a feature that I didn't modify for them. I just left it the way it is. Basically, this pulls up your name, your email, as well as your phone number, and just pre-populates this for you. But in case you would like this particular listing to have a different contact person, a different email address, you would just change that up here, and you would still own this listing in the database, and you'd still be able to manipulate it with this particular user account. And then lastly, you have the publication. You choose whether you want it to be visible to the public. Again, this is translated wrong. It's yes or no. Based on this, it just inserts a Boolean value of 0 or 1. And not from where, but from, let's see, from when, from what date onwards would you like to publish. And this again just uses a date to say, well, I'd like it to go online June 1st, Wednesday, and then you hit save. So once you've hit save, I'm going to put this on no just to give you a quick overview. If you hit save, it's going to save it for you and just tells you your listing has been saved. Go back to the overview or add a new listing. So let's go back to the overview and take a look. And here you go. It was just at the top, but it's not anymore, so I'm just going to type it in. Here you go. So I didn't upload any pictures. That's why the picture is missing. It gives me a broken icon here. But as you can see, it's already been inputted, and it's unpublished, so there's no point of going to the detail page. Another thing I forgot to mention is I'm just going to pull up any listing in front of me right now by random. Here you go. Well, let's take another one. This one. Right. So this is the name of the listing, and you'll notice that the URL also carries the same name, and this is just purely for SEO purposes. Now, if there were 2 words here or 3 words, there's another piece of JavaScript in that same form that I just showed you, and that converts it into a so-called slug, just like WordPress does. So it removes all the spaces and hyphenates the string for you, removes capitals, and makes it just single case, and saves that as a slug in the database. And then the way the URLs are built up is using an ID and a slug. The reason why it's not just a slug is because I don't want to use that as an identity field, and I'd have to write extra code to make that unique as well. So instead, I just used ID. So the listing is picked up by ID, and this is just a slug just for SEO purposes, purely for SEO purposes. And you'll also notice that there are no URL parameters like this, meaning that it doesn't say listing name equals ABC, and slug equals ABCD. The reason I haven't done this is it is actually doing that, but using a Microsoft URL utility, an IIS utility. I've just rewritten that such that it just gives you SEO-friendly URLs instead, and it looks more like this with a number and a name rather than question marks and equal signs, and it's just easier to read that way. So that's pretty much all of it. The last thing I would show you is the admin functionality. Here, the administrator of the website can add new users, and that's something that XMod Pro supports out of the box. So yeah, I would say pretty much that's all that I can show you today with this website. But basically, all of this was done from scratch, and yeah, it did not take me very long, and it's quite a good solution.
Well, thank you. That's a very detailed site.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Pars?
Well, I want to start out by saying that it's
Ask if
impressive.
and connect later this.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, Kelly. I was going to ask if Pars was planning to attend DNN Connect later this month.
When is it actually? I'm not too sure when it is.
If you haven't made travel plans, then I think you're out of luck. It's in a week or so. Most people are traveling to Spain now.
Spain. Okay, well, I am very close by. I'd actually like to attend, but the thing is, right now is a really difficult time for me. I'm in the middle of so many things. In fact, I was actually planning to go to DNNCon in April, but it was I mean, I was a student at that time, and I was finishing up my thesis, so I really could not make it to that one. And right now is also really, it's just bad timing, and it gets me every time, to be honest. It's actually sad, but every single time I want to attend one of these events, something comes up. It's quite sad, actually.
So, about how long did this take you to build?
Well, I built this while I was a student, and I used to work about 2 hours per day on it, and not including weekends. So if you calculate 2 hours per day for, let's say, I would say 40 weeks. So 40 weeks plus times 2 hours, so 40 times 7 times 2. It took me quite some time, I would say, because I didn't focus on it completely. I did it just on the side while doing my studies. But I think at this level, I could probably put something like that together within, I would say, 2 weeks if I work on it every day. It should not take more than 2 weeks, maybe even less, to be honest, because I've gotten so used to XMP by now that if I have an idea, I don't think about it too much. I just start building it, and it usually works out really well.
I think I lost him.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah. I think I
Sorry, I was saying, I said, no, I said if I was to work on it every single day, it would probably take me 2 weeks or less than that, because I've gotten very used to XMP, and right now it's quite easy to work with. So you can prototype something in 2-3 hours, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very impressive.
Thank you.
Obviously, unfortunately, you're not going to make DNN your full-time career, right? You've got a.
Well, I mean, the company in Suriname is going to continue doing it, and but my main thing is aerospace still. So, but I mean, it's never going to stop. The DNN is never going to stop. It is one of my favorite tools, if not the favorite tool for web development. So,
Good answer.
I always keep myself up to date. Yeah.
That's excellent. Are there any questions for Paris?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions, honestly.
I do have one question.
Yeah,
You use
sure.
a lot of jQuery libraries.
I
Was
do.
this process, it was like 2 years ago, was this process kind of an exploratory process for you? As you built it, you started going out to find a solution?
It was, yeah. At that time it was. Now I have a few basic ones that I with, but at that time it was more like, you need something done and you need to find a way to do it, and that's when I used all these jQuery frameworks together. But I mean, nowadays, with the level that I am at now, with my knowledge of web development, I would probably go bare minimum and only use what I really need. Because I mean, I'm sure this website that I just showed you, it could be much faster if I just eliminated half the libraries, because they're not really necessary. And you could do them with 1-2 lines of code, especially the thing that I showed you with the price, that you have to input the price. I'm using a library for that, but I mean, a basic regex could take care of that for you. And a bunch of other workarounds. Yeah, at that time, that's why it was exploratory. So it was like, okay, I'm looking for something that does 1, 2, 3. You Google that, you find something, you read about it, you check the reviews, you implement it, it works, and yeah, you just let it stick.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes for me most of the time too. There are too many libraries coming out every day anyway to know which is the right one.
That's true.
I think we all kind of settle in on a few that we like, that we think are stable and are updated regularly. Do you have any particular favorites?
Libraries?
Yeah.
Well, I use jQuery for everything, but when it comes to other things, specific jQuery libraries, I think my favorite is still data tables, the one I showed you earlier. I've built a lot of web applications as well. Well, a lot. I'm saying a lot. Not many of them have been used as yet. I'm still building some of them. But I think data tables gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of building overviews. It takes care of the whole interface for you. It takes care of the searching, filtering, and pagination for you. And I really like that, especially from a web application standpoint. If you're building applications that are working with data constantly, then it's really, really good for that stuff. And that is, I would say, my personal favorite.
Do you use feeds much? XMod Pro?
I do actually, yeah. Yeah, I do. Actually, the search that I showed you on the home page, that was based on feeds. Because you're searching, and with Ajax, it pulls up the feed, looks for it, and gives you that as a result. That's when I first started using feeds. Nowadays, I should have probably shown you that, but I don't have that at hand. I actually built a mobile app for this same website, and that used XMod Pro feeds to pull data from the website to the app. So the app interface was all offline within the app itself, and it would just pull JSON feeds and populate the templates inside the application on your phone. And it was very good because it loads in a couple of seconds, only downloads one main image, and the rest is all JSON stuff, and populates the whole view for you in your phone. It was a phone gap application, and that's when I started actually going into feeds much, much more. And even the view counter that I showed you on the detail page, every time you refresh the page, the view counter increments with one view. That's using feeds as well. And I think that is also one of the best features in XMod Pro, because we're moving so much towards Ajax now. You want websites to load faster. You want everything to be happening asynchronously, and the fact that feeds enable that out of the box, that is just perfect.
Excellent. I couldn't ask for a better response.
Any chance you guys hear me now? Am I back by any chance?
Yes, we hear you.
Hey, Paras, I gave you about 20 compliments throughout that whole thing, and I don't think any of it went through. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah, just wanted to let you know that was really impressive.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on then.
Yep, definitely.
So up next will be Ryan. Ryan, you ready to go?
I am. I'm still hanging around. I will pause video when we go into screen share, try and save some of that bandwidth there. Make sure, do pipe up or chime in if I start to get choppy. I'll try and keep the chat open so I can watch it. Not much I can do from here, but hopefully it'll be a good enough connection to maintain. This session is part 3 of a session of Troubleshooting XMod Pro that we started last year. I put together a couple of ideas of things that I had done with my own crew when training and teaching new guys on how to work within XMod Pro, they might be familiar with .NET Nuke already, they might be familiar with other tools, they might be already somewhat familiar with XMod Pro, but how exhaustively and completely we use XMod Pro means that they were running into error messages and problems much more frequently than people might, just because of the number of hours we're spending in XMod Pro doing everything seat of our pants as we quickly go through and build solutions. So I started accumulating a screenshot archive of all the possible errors and the possible reasons for those errors. And this presentation is really come out of that and is entire screen. Wow. So this presentation has come out of that. Let's make sure that I'm sharing the right screen and it's my browser screen rather than Google Hangouts. Do you see the Prezi presentation in front of you now? Or not?
I only see a black screen in your mouse.
You see a black screen and my mouse. Let's just stop sharing. Let's share the whole screen. And now is better?
Yes.
Or not?
Looks good to me.
All right. Good deal, good deal. So basically, if you're not familiar with Prezi, it's a presentation device that lets you put together kind of non-linear presentation paths. I'll just kind of jump right into a couple of things to introduce this off, give this the right bookends. But again, my name is Ryan Moore with the More Creative Company. As I mentioned, this tool in this Prezi location was something I put together so that I could train and show my crew different kinds of errors and what to do when they run across those errors, or how to better find those. I'll recap a little bit about this presentation since it's been a few months since I've done steps 1 and 2. Stop off on some highlights, but I'm heading to really the last section, which is module or DNN level errors that are affecting you but aren't necessarily your XMod Pro code or anything that's going on inside of them, but you're tripping across those errors anyways. And then I'll finish by going through some of what I teach the crew as what I call ballistic method troubleshooting to help you more quickly get down to the section of your problems better than scrutinizing every single line of code one line at a time to guess where you think an error is coming from. So in this kind of introduction, we described that you're working in XMod Pro and an error has occurred. What do you do now? You get something like a message that tells you, well, first thing, you face palm because this isn't the first time you run across an error, but you're stuck in this situation. Maybe you get something like a stack trace error message that's giving you something out of ASP.NET, and it's not giving you very much that's useful. But if you dig through these error messages, you can find nuggets that will tell you where your error message is coming from, or what the source of it is, and you can head in the right direction. You might not know exactly what's going on, but you can take a look at this one and see that it's mentioning a SQL data source. So your error is probably in your SQL query, or at least in your SQL that is in your list data source or in your form. Similarly, you can decide that you know that something is going on in a template, and maybe there's something going on that you've typed something in the wrong place inside of a template. So by going through these error things, you can learn that essentially errors fall into 3 different types or locations. You can run into SQL-related errors with putting out or saving or querying. You run into form or template coding errors, and those are errors with what you've put together, either with your XMod syntax or putting things in the wrong place, or simply using things incorrectly. But then third, in the section we're getting into today, we really have DNN and module-related errors. Some of those start off on the XMod Pro side. Many of those go over into the DNN side. So just to kind of describe and quickly jump through these with SQL data errors, most often the most problematic one is that you'll run across the given key is not present in the dictionary. And people say, what does that mean? Well, it means that you have a SQL query and you have 3 fields coming out of your SQL query, and you've got a 4th field or something with a different name that you are querying or that you're using as a token inside of your template, and it's telling you, hey, I've got a token here. It doesn't match what I've been told. You got a problem. Maybe it's a typo. Maybe you forgot to put it in your SQL. But getting down to the bottom of where these things come from is a matter of practice and experience and running into these things. So I'm not going to spend too much time on these, but we have things like whether your data token, like I was just describing, is not within the SQL results. Maybe you've got something that's fairly famous. You might get a message that says object variable or a with block variable not set. That doesn't really tell you that much, but what it means is that you've got a data token in the wrong place. Take a look here at this block of code, and we can see that we're in an XMod Pro template, but we've got a row number or something out of our data query that should be coming out of our list data source, but we're specifying that in our header template. The header template doesn't receive that kind of data. The item template is where that's going to be located. So your error message here is simply telling you, hey dummy, you got the thing in the wrong place. You're not sure if you're having technical difficulties or just user error. So I'll kind of jump through more of the bigger ones here as we go through, but no, let's move out. I want to do this manually. Misparameters, SQL error procedures, external database connections. I don't know. I think I hit my favorites or the main ones that trouble people. I'll encourage you to watch the previous XMod Pro user hangouts to catch section 1, because section 1 was definitely where I spent more time going through the details of SQL errors and what you can do to help troubleshoot those. The next section that we jumped into were code errors. There are things that you do that can really make XMod Pro blow up. The worst of those errors is a point in which you have messed the error up, the code up so badly that the display on your template of your template inside the XMod Pro module blows up, and you do not have your ability to quickly get to the form template or the form code, and you have to go to the control panel or you have to go to some other module so that you can get back to the code. So I liken this to a full nuclear event. You have a self-contained bomb that has occurred. In this particular one, the problem was that we have a list data source in this example. I don't know if you can see that very well. I'll zoom in a touch more. In this particular example, it was because there's a list data source. Looks good. We've got some parameters passed into it. They look good. We're closing that list data source. Hold on a second. Originally, that list data source was self-closing. We left it self-closing. We added some parameters, and now we're closing it. That's a bad enough level of error that XMod Pro is not going to be able to parse that. It's going to stop cold, and it's going to create this level of problem. As an example, there are two types of these things that can occur. Self-closing tags, closing too soon and still having parameters after them is a really good example. Another example is just not closing a tag. So you can get error messages like unexpected end of file looking for tag. Literally, that means that you started a tag and you never closed it. And the parser went through its best all the way to the end of your file to try and find the closer of that tag, and it couldn't find one. In this particular example, I'm showing an XMod select where we have the start, the case, we don't have a close of the XMod select, and therefore everything blows up. That's a pretty good example of some of the more common, more rough errors that can occur inside of XMod code, but just from the complexity of the bubbles that you see on the screen here, you can see that we went in several different directions. We went through errors that are specific to templates, errors that are specific to features, errors that are specific. One of my favorite errors is one that... Oh, no.
You seem to be
one of my favorite errors is the one that can come... Sorry, go ahead, Melinda.
You seem to be cutting out a little. It's hard to tell if it's from my end.
Hopefully it's all right. It is passable. So one of my favorite errors is if you accidentally post a form in a template, you put form code in a template file, or you accidentally put template code in a form. Either way, it's a complicated mess, and it is going to be a problem at At best, you simply grab your code from the right location and you correct the problem. What happens with my crew every once in a while is we'll think we're clicking on the right thing, we'll paste some code in, and we'll have just obliterated some code that we don't have a backup of, or maybe we have a backup from a week ago. So I encourage people to try and have a method, try and work in external things like Sublime and other code editors, and then paste code into XMod Pro. That way you have a backup copy external. Or back a while ago, Angus wrote a great tutorial on how to use Subversion and connect Subversion to your XMod Pro folder in your hosting location, so that then you get backup copies going on all the time. So if you have more questions or you're interested in some more of those really interesting error messages and things that you get inside of code, then you can come into this second session where we really focused on those things. I will say that there was one new one that I added in just yesterday as a new error message that we had seen. Let's go take a look. It was one of these ladder 2s in forms. No edit form. Scalar variable. Scalar variable is one that's fairly popular. It happens often enough, and we just added this to this document recently because I hadn't had a screenshot of it before. Essentially, this happens inside of your form and template related code. Whenever between the two, the communications back and forth between templates and forms, you are referencing something that doesn't exist, and it's going to give you a message like must declare the scalar variable ID. It's kind of a cryptic message. You don't really get much at all out of the stack trace, but what it's telling you there is that there's a variable that's being referenced that isn't being referenced or provided somewhere else, and you need to name this variable or provide this variable. In this particular case, it's just sloppiness. So when I take a look, if I look at this template and this form, we look in the template and we have the edit link for the template providing a parameter of employee ID with a capital E and a capital I, and we're passing in a number of the ID here. So we've got employee ID being passed in. But in the form, when we are bringing things in, we are looking for user ID and we are looking for an ID. So ID versus past user ID in this particular case with a parameter. It's naming, and not, I wouldn't even call this typos. It's just changing the variables and making sure you got the right ones in place. There's one that's expected here that would just be at ID. So you either correct this by calling this past user ID or switching and just calling this one ID. Either way, what it's telling you is that it is expecting it's expecting a variable being passed in, and it's not being passed in or got the wrong name or number. There are a few other ones that we will add into this section. We're kind of upside down here at the moment. A few other ones that I do have to work on, such as a couple of errors related to GUIDs. GUIDs can be very problematic when they're treated as numeric instead of strings, or treated not as a real GUID and you actually need to treat it as a string. That trips up my database guy a couple of times a month, probably. And I need to write a good little note about GUIDs and when to treat them as strings and when to treat them as GUIDs. One point to mention that I didn't add into the template section, but I should add as a, I don't know if I'd call this an error, but just to know, is that out of the database, when you are saving Boolean values, you're obviously saving those as a 1 or a 0. 1 is true and 0 is false. Whenever you are using evaluation statements inside of XMod Pro, things like the XMod Pro Select, that is going to be evaluated as a Boolean based off of the word true or false. So if you are bringing in a Boolean value and you are having an XMod Select evaluate it, if you say if it is 1 or if it is 0, do this or that, it's going to go to the else statement because it's not evaluating them as 1 or 0. It's evaluating them as the words true or false. So you have to make sure that you're putting in the right wording in the right place regarding Booleans and true versus 1. Date text, I don't actually remember what was the story with that one. But without further ado, let's head out. No, I want to go back. let's head out to the section of the presentation where we're getting into other DNN-related and module-related errors. All right. So these issues do not involve data cells. They don't involve code functionality, but more often to things that can happen in DNN or in your modules in general. So these are things that maybe you need to keep them in mind so that you can go forward looking for them. So one that I briefly touched on before is also quite appropriate here, and it has to do with configuration of your XMod modules. When you configure a module, you set a template. If you need one, you set a form, and then the two of those states talk back and forth to each other with no problem. But if you forget to set a form, you can get an error message like this. Form compilation message. You know, this form that is assigned has been deleted or renamed. But if you look at the screen, that's not the case at all. There's no form set. So the problem here isn't that something's deleted or gone or missing. It's that you haven't set a form. You only have a template. But the fact that we had an edit link or a delete link here, this edit link means that if you try and click on it, it's going to try and load a form state, and it doesn't have a form state to load. So, you know, this isn't necessarily your code. This isn't necessarily a problem. This is configuration. This is making sure you take a look at it, see what's happened, and assign a form to it. But let's talk a little bit about file renaming, because it's a horrible, horrible problem. Much like stumbling across Sean Connery in a space nappy, it happens often, especially when people are working directly in FTP locations or directly on the server, and they are working with the XMod Pro folder to work directly in code. I think I know that Patrick works that way. I know a couple of developers who swear by working directly, and they know XMod syntax better directly in the actual .NET files rather than through the XMod interface. Myself, I'm on the other side of the camp, but it really doesn't matter as long as you don't confuse the two or copy and paste the wrong code from one place to another. But nothing will, you know, throw your forms and your templates inside of your DNN site for a loop than renaming them or moving them out of the XMod Pro folder location. So, you know, just remember that renaming a file in the FTP side of things is not the best idea. If you're going to rename it, you need to rename it inside of the XMod Pro control. But even then, you're going to have to go back and reassociate any of the other locations with that new file name. So, in general, I tell my developers, don't rename things. You know, pick a name and then stick with it, even if it's a bad name. If there's a reason that you need to rename something, does it really mean you should just make a second copy of this thing, keep the old, name it new, do some new development on it, and then associate your new form? That way, if you have any forms or templates that are using the previous version, you're not accidentally orphaning them by just doing a rename action. Continuing with this theme, I'll talk about a problem that had mystified us a couple of different times, and the answer to the problem is there was a junk file in the XMod Pro folder location, and I'll explain what I mean here in just a moment. But essentially, the control panel in XMod Pro lists all files in that default XMod Pro folder location, whether that's for forms or templates or feeds. And when there is an unexpected file in that location, then the list is going to break. What you can have is a situation where you load up the site and there are no templates. There are no. And you think there were 120 templates now. Oh wait, they're there in FTP. Oh, there's no problem. And you might start going down a road of thinking maybe XMod Pro is having a problem reading the folder structure and seeing the files. What's going on? But in this particular problem that we ran across, it's because one of our crew was working directly in the file location, and they need a backup file. You know what? And when I say one of my crew, it's probably me, because I make things back files all the time. Working on a different version, you copy and paste it, you rename it to .bak, that way you can have it here, you know it's an inert file, you can always come back and get to it later. Just the presence of this file called a .bak in that folder structure caused the control panel to no longer list any templates out inside of it. So this is a good example of something that's neither code nor SQL. It's just an error that can occur because of the structure of how it reads things. One of the next ones I'm going to get to is kind of a similar kind of thing. This isn't a problem with code. This isn't a problem with SQL. This is a problem in the configuration of your XMod Pro module instance on a page. And one of the things that we learned is that we cannot have pipes. There will be times that we will pass variables. Variables, but as a value, comma-separated or pipe-separated string can have an array of values being passed into some function or some feature. We do it in URL query strings all the time. We do it in forum posts all the time. We learned the hard way, do that through a module variable. You can encounter a situation where once you have set one with pipe, you are not able to unset it. The controls, no matter what you do to change them and press save, or delete them and press save, won't actually save because there's something in the structure that uses pipes itself, and you've created your own problem. I had to clear it out of the database, clear it out of the module settings, and once that was done, then I was able to go forward and do other edits and changes. But the short rule was just to not use pipes inside of those module variables. I might take a second to ping Kelly here. Kelly, I don't actually recall. Did we determine there were some other special characters that we shouldn't use inside of module variables? Was it more than just pipes?
It's primarily pipes. XMod Pro uses that to pack values together.
Yep. Small unintended consequence created a mystery for an afternoon. Now that we know what the problem is, it's easy to share the solution with anybody else that might run across it. jQuery issues. Here's another really good one that stumps us every once in a while. It's actually a problem that when it comes up, we don't even bother trying to figure out why it's happening. We just go on with our workarounds. We just move on for our workarounds. Essentially, there can be things that happen inside of older skins and older themes when you apply them to a new website. Maybe those things load up older versions of jQuery that conflict with your newer versions of jQuery. It also can happen when you combine together on a page different kinds of modules that might bring in their own jQuery library. Most of the time, we're finding it to be a jQuery-related conflict. But essentially what happens is when you click to edit a template in the quick editor and it brings up the pop-up window, the pop-up window either A, doesn't work at all, or B, it opens full screen and takes over the whole screen you were working in, and you can't get away from it. Saving or closing it keeps it in that full screen. Or similarly, the control panel won't work, and the control panel won't load to actually load things in the templates or load things in the file lists, and it's not operating properly. And these almost always come down to jQuery-related conflicts. So a few workarounds. If you realize that when you're clicking on a template to edit it, the pop-up isn't acting properly for you, just right-click and you can choose Open in a new tab. Sometimes that's more useful anyways. Have it in a new tab or split screen and put it to the side. You can keep making your edits and keep pressing save. Your other side of your screen, you can just hit refresh. Those two actions seem to be faster than opening the pop-up, editing, closing the pop-up, refreshing, opening the pop-up, and going through that cycle over and over again. So we often tell people, when you get stuck, don't even blame why you're stuck. Just right-click and open that. Similarly, if the control panel is having issues and you're stuck, sometimes it can be a whole website that's affected. Remember that you can go into page settings and you can change the skin of that page in page settings and do a preview of that page. Once you do the preview, you get the query string for the URL that loads Gravity is my main suggestion. Gravity or any other skin that you know that's fairly sound. Adelphia I used for a while before Gravity, but Gravity's my mainstay now as default one. You go back, you load the whole thing in Gravity. You don't actually have to press save. You're not changing the skin of the page. You just loaded the preview. That preview is now loading in the other skin. If then your pop-ups work and your control panel works, just keep that query string on, tack it on to any page you need to ROS, temporarily put your site into, or that page into Gravity, work, and keep on moving. So, you know, I don't want to say that we keep the errors and we leave them there forever, but when we're in the middle of development work, and I have one guy working on themes and skinning, and another guy working on functionality that he's bringing in a calendar, we just need to get work done and try and stay off of each other's feet. And this is one way we work around those temporary problems. Oh, I do have one more. Okay, DNN-related level of things. Just remember that XMod Pro is a part of DNN. And if you get a client that suddenly calls in and says, hey, I'm using this tool you made me and I can't upload files anymore, I'm not able to make edits and changes, you go ahead and check back at the core level. Make sure that the ASP.NET Worker process has the full rights it needs to be able to upload files. Even though XMod Pro is using a different method of getting to the folder system and saving those files, it is still subject to the right permissions. And the easiest or fastest way for me to check those permissions is back in the admin level file manager. I just go to the admin level file manager and I try and upload an image to any one of the other folders. As soon as it starts the upload process, it'll tell you an error has occurred, please contact your hosting provider, check on security settings. That's the quickest way for me to diagnose, is this maybe a permissions problem, or is there something else going on? So I mentioned to people that this is a quick and easy way to test. If I trust a client enough, I'll even tell the client that they should check on it. So that's module level or DNN level errors that you can watch out for in troubleshooting. This kind of finishes up the third section of what do you do when you've encountered problems inside of XMod Pro. I'm going to post these videos where we've been recording these as part of the XMod Pro Hangout back over to the .NET Nuke user group that I help support and help run, the Southern Fried DNN user group. So we're going to post these videos, we're going to post these links and try and help more people not only get introduced to XMod Pro, but also get access to these tools. Patrick and Kelly and I have kicked around a few fun ideas of how maybe we can make these listings of error messages and their responses or things to check into some useful format, maybe a help section or a tutorial section or something like that. So we'll see if it shows up in some other places later. But for right now, I'm going to finish with just a few moments of the ballistic troubleshooting method. I've had very smart developers spend hours looking through code and get frustrated when I find the problem in about 4 minutes. And it's an approach type thing that maybe it's a learned thing, maybe it's a logic thing, but I see that not everyone understands this idea about how to quickly hone in on where a problem is. Steve Willis was our database developer for quite a long time. He passed away a few years ago. But he taught us and named this the ballistic method, or the ballistic approach to testing and troubleshooting. You might think of logical ways that you might have played the kids' Milton Bradley game Battleship. Either you randomly shot all over the board, or you methodically went left, right, left, right, left, right, and you honed in on where those ships were. And that's exactly what you're doing. Think of it as having a howitzer parked at the edge of a field, and there are people in the middle of the field that you got to take care of. Okay, you start at the left, then you move to the far right, and you keep moving in, and you eventually hone in on the right area. And that's what we do with code when we are trying to do this ballistic method. So to kind of give an example of this, I'm going to exit out. I'm just going to look at some code that's here in an XMod Pro template, and if I thought ahead, I would have hidden an error somewhere inside of this so we could take a look at it. This is our XMod Pro module kit. That is our map locator kit. It's pre-made to automatically have listings out one side and maps and points and geolocation and a lot of other fun things in it. It's got a lot of moving parts is the main thing. And if this has an error in it, that error could be anywhere along a long block of code and content. And depending on what the error is, I kind of jump in and say, okay, it's obviously a form or a template level error. Let me look at that. Oh, it's obviously a SQL level error. Let me look at that. But when I don't know, or I'm not sure where the error is, I will just work on this template over and over again in a couple of minutes, hone in on where the problem is. And it literally might start with me saying, okay, let me start by removing what I can remove. So I'll come in and I'll say, okay, here we go, we've got our template starting up. If I'm able to, I will start off by hard coding any of the variables that are being passed in. Because if there's a problem with variables being passed in, and I can replace them with a hard-coded 1, 2, 3 or ABC, they might not return the right results. But does the error go away? If so, then let's check into those variables, and we'll quickly see if that's the problem. Other times, I'll move away from actually querying the database altogether, and I'll see if I can hard-code a set of data and bring that in to see if that's where the problem's coming from. But otherwise, I'll come into something like the header, and I'll say, okay, first off, let's get rid of everything in the header. Is the header giving me problems? Come in, delete everything out of the header, and press save. If the problem is solved, I got to come back to the header. That's where my problem is. Then I come back into the item template. I delete everything out of the item template. Hey, is my problem solved? Oh, wait, no, the problem still persists? Then my problem must be in the footer or in something else below it. Oh, wait, the problem went away? Okay, so let's go back into the item template. Let me delete the first line. Did the problem go away? Let me delete the second line. Did the problem go away? Let me delete the third line. Did the problem go away? Oh, it solved itself when I deleted the third line. Oh, do I have a typo in the word description in my token? I'm not using, evaluation. I'm not scrutinizing all the blocks of code. I'm looking at them in a ballistic method, and I'm just trying to eliminate things quickly. And if the problem is solved, then I come back and try and figure out where the problem is. So the crew will sometimes get frustrated with me because they'll say I'm not using my head, but I'm quick at finding the problem and finding those solutions much faster than if I was just to start at line number 1 and begin reading through every single line to make sure I knew what was going on. So that's just a quick example of the ballistic method as an idea of how you can save time after you've made a first educated guess to get you in an area to help you troubleshoot and quickly decide where you might have to look next to go through things. So as an end here on this session of things, this has been a 3-part session of what to do when you run into an error in XMod Pro and where to look. And as I said before, hopefully we can apply this to some other locations and have this data and information live on in some other places, make it easy for other people to run across. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to have access to this Prezi and go through it, show it off to others on your own, and enjoy and learn from those examples.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right. Let's see.
Does anybody have any questions for Ryan?
Stop sharing and video. Hey, there we go. All right. Well, thanks very much, everybody. I don't know. Hutch, anybody else have questions? I know sometimes questions come back later on or are in the chat side. Let me glance through.
No, that was good, Ryan. It's funny because I actually have been using that ballistic method without even knowing what it was called.
Yep.
Yeah, I go into code. I do the same thing. I'll go into code, or I'm not sure, and I'll strip a piece out and see what it does. And that works good for me.
Steve Willis and I had talked about it a bit, and why, I don't want to say kids, but why younger developers didn't know how to approach things. And I think maybe it's an experience issue or an age issue in that you don't worry about the details. You just go in and start finding and honing in on the error. And maybe when you're fresh out of school or maybe when you know code so early, all you're thinking about is, well, is it this problem? Is it that problem? Is it this problem? We don't care. We just got to get quickly to the block of code.
Yeah, that takes too long.
Yep.
Actually,
Well, Kelly, I'll pass it back over to you and Melinda. I'm going to mute. I'll still stay around here for a few minutes, but I did catch a couple of phone calls a moment ago, and I think someone has their hair on fire, so I need to go check on them and see if they're okay. But I'll be here if you need me.
Okay, I just wanted to offer my explanation for why the youngsters don't know the ballistic method. And that's because, frankly, when you're young, you have all the time in the world, but we oldsters with the graying hair, we know that life is short, and we don't want to waste time debugging code.
I'll follow that one. That's a good one.
All right, thanks a lot, Ryan.
Yep.
Well, that wraps up another user group meeting, this one for May, and I thank you all for being with us. Paras had to take off, and we wish him well. He did a wonderful presentation, I thought, and I hope that he'll be able to share some more of his developments with us going forward. A few notes to pass your way in the community. I do want to let you know that Patrick Ryan has finally completed the huge undertaking that is the Discover XMod Pro book. That is the full Elite Edition. Everything's rolled out and ready for your perusal. So I encourage you to go to discoverxmodpro.com and to check out the book. There's a lot of free chapters there, so you can see just how solid and quality the material is, and really get your feet wet. Learning more and more about XMod Pro, because you'll be really surprised if you're new to it, all of the things that you can build with it. And I especially encourage you to read Patrick's introduction, because it's quite inspiring. And we heard today how Paras, who was a front-end developer mainly and knew some SQL, was able to really leverage XMod Pro to build a wonderful site even 2 years ago, and is continuing to use XMod Pro to this day. So check out Patrick's book, discoverxmodpro.com. And the only other thing that I have to say is we shall see you in June. June 27th. Thank you, Melinda. And until then, happy XModding. We'll see you later.